Josephine Dunn worked her way up to becoming a leading lady at the end of the silent era and successfully began starring in the Talkies, appearing in the biggest box office hit of 1928. But by 1933, her roles began to decrease in size and she finally retired in 1938. Why? Join me as I investigate. Josephine Dunn was born as Mary Josephine Dunn in 1906 in New York City. I cannot find any information about her family or her childhood, but we do know, according to an interview with the Daily Plainsman newspaper, that she was educated at the Holy Cross Convent School in New York. I'm assuming she must have studied dance from a young age because she apparently dropped out of school at age 14 to begin working as a chorus girl, according to that same interview. Conflicting sources give her debut on the New York stage as either 1920 at the Winter Garden Theater, I'm assuming in the show Broadway Brevities, or in 1921 in Good Morning Dearie at the Globe Theater. According to her interview with the Daily Plainsman, she danced in the chorus in some 20 Broadway shows, ending with Kid Boots in 1925. Her earliest credit listed at the Internet Broadway Database, however, is the 1924 musical Dear Sir. In 1925, she visited the Paramount Picture School with a friend and was offered a place as a student there, studying acting alongside Charles Buddy Rogers and Thelma Todd. Graduating from that school in 1926, Josephine, along with Rogers and Todd, made their motion picture debuts in Fascinating Youth, which Paramount cast from their school program. She played the supporting role of Loris Lane, who was intended to marry Rogers' character Teddy. She followed this role up with 2 bit parts in It's the Old Army Game and Sorrows of Satan, before getting her first major role opposite Evelyn Brent in William Powell in 1927's Love's Great Mistake. That same year, she starred with Wallace Beery and Raymond Hatton in Fireman Save My Child, and with Bebe Daniels in both Swim Girl, Swim, and She's a Chic. She finished out 1927 playing another society girl in an arranged engagement to Charles Buddy Rogers again in Get Your Man. Her society girl this time was a rival to Clara Bow's character, and Clara Bow and Josephine had some nice scenes together, and Josephine gave a lovely, understated performance as Simone, a rich girl in love with another man being forced into an arranged marriage by her family, only to bond with and get advice from her rival. The New York Times praised Josephine's acting and said that she strikes the right key. However, as successful as Josephine's career seemed to be at Paramount, they abruptly dropped her at the end of 1927. In 1928, Josephine began the year by freelancing, first supporting George Sidney and Patsy Ruth Miller in We Americans at Universal, and then starring with Reed Howells in A Million for Love at Sterling. However, she found great success again later that year when she was signed by MGM to star with William Haynes in the sadly lost comedy Excess Baggage, which was one of her favorite roles. Sadly, this film got mixed reviews overall, and the New York Times stated that she was beautiful, but her performance offered little else. But commercially, Josephine's luck was about to change. She was loaned out to Warner Brothers and was cast as Molly, the opportunist wife to Al Jolson in The Singing Fool, a partial talkie which would become the #1 blockbuster hit of 1928. While critically her performance got mixed reviews, I think those are mostly due to the fact that Jolson was such a force of life that any co-star would pale in comparison, which the New York Times pointed out in their review. In my opinion, her portrayal is again wonderfully understated, giving her several moments of quiet annoyance and anger toward her husband. In 1929, Josephine returned to MGM and to Silent Pictures. She starred in All at Sea with Carl Dane and was reunited with Haynes again in A Man's Man, which got her nice reviews in New York Times and Variety this time. She was also loaned to Fox to star with Nancy Carroll in The Sin Sister, and to appear in her first top-billed film, Black Magic. She also co-starred with Joan Crawford, Anita Page, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Rod the Rock in the commercial smash hit Our Modern Maidens, which had synchronized music and sound effects. Josephine gave another delightful performance as Ginger, a friend and nemesis to Joan Crawford's character Billy. Josephine then had 2 more supporting roles in her first all-talking films in 1929, Big Time and A Most Immoral Lady. She finished out the year in the hit musical film Red Hot Rhythm at Pathé, starring as Claire opposite Alan Hale and Catherine Crawford. She also was selected as a Wampas Baby Star of 1929 alongside Jean Arthur, Loretta Young, Anita Page, and Sally Blaine, among others. It seemed Josephine was destined for even greater stardom in the 30s. In 1930, interestingly enough, she returned to Paramount to star alongside Charles Buddy Rogers and Catherine Crawford and Carol Lombard in the lovely musical comedy Safety in Numbers, a zany story about a rich young man whose uncle insists he learn about the real world, so he hires 3 Follies girls to teach him about life. Playing one of the girls, Josephine got to sing the delightful You're the Bee in My Boudoir with Buddy Rogers and got an excellent review in Variety, who said that she gave an excellent and sophisticated performance. While Safety in Numbers got Josephine raves and appears to have been a box office hit, it sadly proved to be Josephine's last starring role in a major A picture at a major studio for some reason. For the rest of 1930 through 1933, Josephine began to freelance and alternated between being a leading lady in Poverty Row B movies and playing supporting role in major studio A movies. However, no matter where or the size of the role, Josephine always gave memorable, often scene-stealing performances. As a leading lady, highlights of her work included Second Honeymoon in 1930, where she played a very sophisticated modern wife who is unhappy with her marriage and attempts to start her life anew away from her husband. In Air Police in 1931, she played a dancer that becomes involved with an air patrol lieutenant. In Murder at Dawn in 1932, she played a young woman that brings her fiancé home to meet her scientist father, only to stumble inadvertently into a house of horrors. In 1932 also, she starred with Buster Collier in The Fighting Gentleman, in which she played the love interest to an amateur boxer. And finally, she played the female lead opposite Ken Maynard in the 1932 Western Between Fighting Men, and had some hilarious scenes with Wallace McDonald. Her memorable supporting roles in this period included the tipsy Clarissa Smith, who stumbles inadvertently upon some important evidence to help Miriam Hopkins in Two Kinds of Women in 1932, playing the ditzy society lady Mademoiselle Martel in 1 Hour with You in 1932 with Jeanette MacDonald, and playing Anne Cabot Ford, a former worldly lover of Linda Watkins' husband in Playthings of Desire in 1933. In 1932, Josephine also returned to Broadway for the first time in years, starring in the successful musical Take a Chance, and then starring in Elmer Rice's play Between Two Worlds in 1934. Following this play's closure, Josephine took a break from acting, I'm assuming due to her recent marriage to her third husband, Eugene Lewis. Following their divorce in 1935, Josephine returned to the screen to appear in The Seminoles. She then married for the fourth and final time to producer Carol Case, whose father owned the Algonquin Hotel in New York. She took another 3 years off from acting before returning one last time to the screen in 1938 to play a supporting role in the public service movie Birth of a Baby. Following its completion, Josephine retired for good. There's not really any information out there about the rest of Josephine's life. She appears to have enjoyed a quiet retirement with her husband. Case passed away in 1978. Josephine lived another 5 years, succumbing to cancer in 1983 at the age of 76. So we are left with the question, why did Josephine Dunn's stardom falter after she made such a successful transition to the Talkies? Well, I think there are a couple reasons. She seems to have been let go from her MGM contract in 1929, and while she had a very successful end to that year and a start of 1930, moving forward on her own away from a studio may have made it difficult for her to secure starring roles in major places. Thus, she drifted in supporting roles in B movies. The other reason could have been Josephine herself decided to gradually phase out her acting career. According to a quote from her that I found on Mubi, she said, "I do not like these heavy roles. I like the part that I played in Excess Baggage better than any other role I have ever had. I made that picture first and then played with Jolson, and ever since I have been cast as a philanderer or worse. I do not believe it is the kind of role I play best, and it is distasteful to me. Josephine appears to have preferred to play the romantic, virtuous ingenue, but often found herself typecast as various supporting character parts like the boozy party girl, the flighty society lady, or the worldly other woman. While she was outstanding in these character parts, her heart just wasn't in them, so she gradually called it quits. It's a shame, as she probably could have gone on playing memorable character parts, but if that's not what she wanted to do, then it was right for her to walk away. Fortunately, we are left with many of her performances to enjoy. From her silent days, check out Get Your Man on YouTube, and you can also find Our Modern Maidens available to rent on Prime. From her Talkie days, you can find Second Honeymoon and Murder at Dawn on YouTube, and see if you can try to find Safety in Numbers, because it's delightful. Josephine Dunn was an exceptionally talented actress and really ahead of her time in the subtle nuances and modern characters that she brought to each of her portrayals. While she should have been a bigger star, she still made quite the impression, leaving behind a fantastic body of work. What a legend. I must thank my sources for this episode, Trav SD, visit his Travelance blog, the Daily Plainsman newspaper, Mubi, and the Margaret Herrick Library digital collections. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the Talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent Talkie career of Dorothy Dwan. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.